Another distinction is BIOS versus UEFI. Here's the deal. BIOS is the old way to bootstrap a computer and perform low-level setup. It's often called a de facto system setup mechanism because it's been around since the very first IBM PC computers in the early 80s. Actually, BIOS even goes before that into the 1970s. Now, that's good because it's a system that works and it's stood the test of time. The problems with BIOS are, number one, there's just a very limited amount of memory that it can access. It can do instructions of only 16 bits in length, so it's really a limited, antiquated setup system. There's no mouse, there's no network, you have to navigate the BIOS with your keyboard. It's just basically hamstrung by history. The good news is that we have a replacement for BIOS called the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, or UEFI. UEFI firmware will ride on top of the legacy BIOS. Because let's face it, when you're thinking of computers, you're thinking of different hardware, different CPU, AMD versus Intel, chipsets, a lot of the stuff that we'll be learning as we proceed through the rest of this A+ learning path. How are you going to develop a low-level system interface that interacts with all these different hardware platforms and operating systems and so forth? So you'll find that PC systems, and when I say PC, I'm referring to Intel AMD systems that'll typically run Microsoft Windows or some kind of Linux or Unix. In the Apple world, Apple hardware, Apple computers have been using UEFI strictly for many years now, so it's an old hat thing to them. But we in the PC world, it's sort of a slow uptake. We absolutely need UEFI nowadays for many reasons. One reason is that you can only have hard disks, bootable hard disks of up to 4 gigabytes in size under the old BIOS. If you're using UEFI firmware, on the other hand, you can have an essentially limitless-sized boot hard disk. Now, we'll get into that more as we go along. I don't want to overwhelm you. For now, you're going to, in your work, need to figure out, if you get a computer on your workbench, you need to figure out how new it is. If it's anywhere in the vicinity of the last 5, 6, 7 years, you can rest assured that it's using UEFI. BIOS only systems are long becoming just a historical relic. Now look down below. That's showing you the interface of the Gigabyte UEFI BIOS screen. This gives you the best of both worlds. If you boot into setup on a system that has UEFI, you're able to access all of the low-level system settings that you normally do with old-school BIOS, but in UEFI you're working not in a 16-bit environment, but a 64-bit environment. And the network can be initialized, so you can actually download stuff from the internet from this. Your mouse is functional, so you don't have to know all these arcane key commands to do settings. And it's just a much graphically richer environment, as you can see from this screenshot.